All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council. It is 10:02 a.m. and we will come to order. And I'll go ahead by calling the roll. Chair Canseco is out. I'm John Volamowitz present. Mr. Brumley is not present. Dr. Cartwright. Dr. Cartwright is on the way. He may be running a couple minutes late. He's not here yet. Mr. Hallbauer.
Here.
Ms. Rogers. Dr. Skoma.
Present.
Ms. Smith.
Present.
And Dr. Taylor.
Here.
Very good. We have a quorum. I would like to, I believe Dr. Cartwright will be here, so I don't believe we need to excuse his absence. But I would entertain a motion to excuse Chair Canseco and Mr. Brumley.
I so move.
It's been moved, seconded, and without objection, they are excused. I'm going to take a couple things out of order and just give you guys a heads up. I am on a pretty hard stop. I think we should get through this, but I'm at a hard stop shortly after lunch. So I do want to make way through the agenda as efficiently as we can. We're going to start with public comment. When we get to, we are going to have to go into executive session later on to discuss our executive director evaluation. I'm going to move that to the end so that anybody in the public doesn't have to do the stop, start, and false start and coming back in. It is my intention to not take up any other business other than that item after we come back out of executive session, and then I would assume adjourn the meeting. That would be my intention. With that, we'll go ahead and start with public comment, and I will turn it over. Daryl, you running public comment?
I am.
Daryl's running public comment. So,
Okay, so if there are any members of the public that would like to give public comment this morning, I just need you to use the raise hand function in the Zoom app or in the web application. And if you're calling in by telephone, I don't see any telephone callers. I'll get to you after we've gone through all the individuals with their hands up. Just for the record, there's no one present in the room with Mr. Volamowitz and I today, so it's just going to be virtual appearance. So with that, got an individual with the name of Can2K. Would you like to give public comment? Can2K, I have unmuted you or allowed you to speak. If you'd like to give public comment, I just need you to unmute your mic. Your hand is raised. Okay,
we'll just
let's see if I can help you out here. Okay, hearing nothing. All right. Miss Arnold, would you like to give public comment?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
if you just state your name and also try to keep comments to around 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Ashley Arnold. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment regarding final adoption of TSBEP Rule 465.38. Today is a historic day, as for a long time, I never thought this day would actually come. I like to think that the unanimous vote by TSBEP both times during the rulemaking process and the unanimous vote by BHEC in October is finally doing what is right for children and families of Texas and putting professional egos aside. The title change journey seems so simple, but yet has been such a complex issue to bring us to this point today. In fact, advocating for the title change issue predates the creation of BHEC. When school psychologists were brought under TSBEP for the first time in 1995, the title change from Associate School Psychologist to LSSP was a temporary compromise, and yet it has taken TASP almost 30 years to have our rightful title restored. As the Attorney General said, the legislature incorporates nationally recognized standards, and they understand that those standards, quote, allow for the use of the title school psychologist, and nothing in the occupations code prohibits a licensed person from using the term psychologist as part of the title school psychologist. The last 20 years of advocacy about this issue isn't about me, because for all those people that told me over the last 2 decades that the title change would never happen or stop advocating for it, or that there's more important things for TAS to advocate for, my response is, nevertheless, she persisted. And that is what TAS membership does for you. So for all of you listening today, I see you, the current grad student who didn't learn until you were almost done with your school psychology grad program that you couldn't call yourself a school psychologist. I see those of you that moved into Texas from another state and lost your title at the border. I see those of you with a PhD who could not call yourself a school psychologist. I see those of you frantically finishing up another busy school year this week. I see you, the over 1,000 people that gave public comment in favor of the title change that broke TSBEP's public comment system. But most importantly, I see you, the children of Texas, regardless of your race and gender, that one day you will say, I want to be a school psychologist when I grow up. And as TSBEP Chair John Belamowitz said, if you can see it, you can be it. So in closing, this little school psychologist that could ask for your unanimous support of adopting TSBEP Rule 465.38. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arnold.
Ashley, would it be would it be this particular issue that has driven our attendance up to 359 people watching today?
Yes, sir. That would be, in fact, why you've set an attendance record today. There are several watch parties happening across our multiple school districts and universities today.
Okay.
Hey, let's keep working. We're not done. This is just the beginning of improvement. So thank you, Ms. Arnold, and to all those school psychologists out there.
Screen name CT. Do you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you just state your name for the record.
My name is Cody Taylor. I'm in Jefferson County, Southeast Texas.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Mr.
You have 3
Taylor.
minutes, sir.
Hey, I appreciate you allowing us to be here today. So I would like to touch on a couple of things. I've been a part of multiple complaints against 2 LPCs in my area. I have recently gone through a very traumatic portion of my life, and I would like to bring your attention to chapter 681, subchapter D, 681.53, and this primarily deals with paragraphs or statements of E, F, and G. This has to deal with child custody evaluations. I'm sorry, this is very personal for me. The individuals in my case and the complaints brought were founded or unfounded under insufficient evidence, but yet the licensed professional counselors were never allowed to do child custody evaluations. In fact, in paragraph G, licensee may not offer an expert opinion or recommendation relating to the conservatorship of, possession of, or access of a child unless a licensee has conducted a child custody evaluation relating to Texas Family Code subchapter D 107. These individuals, actually one of them signed an affidavit exactly doing that, violating it. This was in part of my complaint, and what I'm bringing to you today is under Texas Family Code 104.008, it also prohibits that type of evidence. We have even went further than that. They've actually instituted into legislation that these individuals look at going into BHEC and changing what's under 0.008, that a licensee cannot do this. These individuals have severely affected my life, and they've affected hundreds of families across the nation. And I want to bring your attention to a severity level underneath your 681.205. If you look at your chart, for an individual who violates this, it goes from level 5 on E to level 4 on F and to level 3. That's a moderate suspension of up to a year. I think individuals who, professionals who get into the business of basically being hitman, lying under oath, which is perjury, and then constituting the separation of a parent and a child should automatically be revocated at minimum of 3 years, if not longer, with continued practices or certification process. These individuals have severely hindered my life. They've actually kept records from us, never filing any reports with Department of Family Protective Services, CPS, or other law enforcement. These individuals have, I think that this portion of the code needs to be changed. If it is found that under 0.53 paragraph G that it has not been completed, that they are immediately turned over to BHEC and they are suspended immediately. So I ask that this be changed. I ask that this is something to be looked at, because at the end of the day, this is severely, without a doubt, hindered my life. And under y'all's investigations, I was never contacted. I was never talked to by an investigator. Yes, sir. I'm wrapping up. I think that it should be transparent as to what's going on. I look at the list that y'all have and putting into your meeting of action items. I don't know of very many people that are talked to. I have 13 pages of a complaint that was issued and nobody contacted me. This person separated me and my child, and this will be the 4th year, 3 out of 4 birthdays that I won't see my daughter, not because I did something wrong, but because of a biased natured LPC. This portion of the code should absolutely be changed, that these individuals lose their license. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor. I just want to say that we can't really comment on things that are not on the agenda, but your comments are well received, and we'll take them to heart. Thank you very much for being here.
Dr. Sarter, did you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, I do. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Terry Ann Sarter, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor, counselor educator, and the liaison to BHEC for the Texas Counseling Association. Additionally, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve on the BHEC Rules and Standardization Task Force. TCA appreciates the efforts taken by BHEC, the executive directors, licensing board members, and the staff to highlight issues that may impact the rulemaking processes and our roles as we continue to support mental health needs of Texans. TCA is concerned related to the proposed BHEC rule changes for 882.61 due to the missing key components when compared to 705A. More specifically, 882.61 discusses special licensing provision for military service members and their spouses, including the practice without a license. Section 705A of the Veterans Auto and Education Improvement Act states service members or spouses submits to the authority of the licensing board and the new jurisdiction for the purpose of standards of practice, discipline, and fulfillment of continuing education requirements. While the proposed rule does indicate service members or military spouses do have to notify the council on an approved form, TCA encourages the council to review the wording of the proposed rules to ensure all mental health professionals are licensed in this state and adhere to continuing education requirements specific to Texas. If a professional is not licensed to practice mental health services in this state, the board may not have the jurisdiction on this matter and cannot enforce and ensure minimal standards are met, which could cause harm to Texans. In terms of legislation, TCA reports House Bill 1167 is set for the Senate local calendar for today. This bill cleaned up the wording associated with BHEC and assisted with the transition language for mental health professionals with the associate license. This is a great stride in acknowledging the competencies and work of LPC associates and LMFT associates in the great state of Texas. Lastly, we appreciate the diligence of the members of BHEC, the Rules and Standardization Task Force, and all licensing boards in the work toward having consistencies across licensing board rules. This continues to provide clarity for duly licensed mental health professionals, the staff, members of BHEC, and the individual licensing boards. We respect all the hard work of our volunteer boards, and thank you for listening, and we appreciate your time, dedication, and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Francis, did you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, my name is Will Francis. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers, Texas chapter. I'll keep mine brief because I just want to echo what Dr. Sarter said. I think that was eloquently described. But NASW also has some concerns around 882, or let me pull up the rule here, around 882.61. The rule feels slightly incomplete if this is the intention of BHEC. I definitely agree with Dr. Sarter that ultimately just allowing someone to practice without any oversight by BHEC feels not what the agency's stated mission is. Under section A, it says that they're able to practice without a license, and yet all throughout the rest, it requires that they hold a license in another state. I think that that could be confusing. I think it should say at a minimum without a Texas license, if that's the way you're going to go, just so that there's an understanding that a license is needed. But even beyond that, when you look at section F, and it says, in order to obtain and maintain the privilege to practice without a license, service member or military spouse must remain in good standing with every licensing authority. I see nothing in this rule that requires the person to update BHEC should they be, subject to a disciplinary infraction in another state, or there's no scope here on how BHEC will obtain or collect that information. So I'm very concerned that it just ultimately puts a lot of the authority for oversight and therefore public protection outside of the space of BHEC, which is really ultimately what I think one of the major linchpins of this agency is. So I would recommend that this rule maybe be tweaked to still require a person check in with BHEC, obtain some form of oversight. Obviously, if you want to get rid of the fees, if you want to get rid of the other stuff, I understand that. But I just think it still needs to include more oversight. This feels very, very loose and very not supportive of public protection. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there being no telephone callers, that concludes public comment.
Very good. I think that takes us into agenda point 3, informational items. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Spinks to fill us in on those informational items before we get on to action.
Okay. The informational items, the first thing I want to start out with was there was a article I put in your materials. It's the Loper Bright versus Raimondo article. Only reason I put that in there is I wanted to make sure you're aware, much like the North Carolina Dental Board case was a watershed moment. This case could be another watershed moment for administrative agencies. Now, I'll say the Chevron standard applies mainly to federal agencies, and this particular agency and the conduct at issue isn't relevant. But what is important is if the U.S. Supreme Court changes the Chevron standard, in other words, the standard by which the federal government defers to agency interpretations of its own statutes, that's going to trickle down to us. Now, Texas has always been a little bit stricter than what the federal government has. That under Texas law, we aren't shown much, if any, deference. But the only reason I put this in here is if that does change, I can guarantee you're going to see more bills filed and probably some changes in the laws to tighten up or totally eliminate the deference to agencies in Texas now. And I gave you an example of a House bill that was filed this time during the 88th session where that was put into issue. Now that bill didn't go anywhere, but this is just something that I'm watching because I do think it could be a watershed moment for administrative agencies, but we'll keep our eye on it. The next item is going to be the second quarter performance measures and calculations. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. The numbers speak for themselves. We're doing really, really well. I have to say, when you look at one of the greatest, I think, triumphs of the council so far has been, if you'll think back to what the social work numbers were whenever they came into BHEC and then look at them now, I think maybe social work may be one of the fastest programs at getting people licensed now. Whereas when they came to BHEC, they were probably one of the slowest. So they are now one of our faster programs. I would also caution the public and even the council members, when you look at like the MFT numbers, don't panic when you see that 140 days. That 140 days is taking into account how long an applicant has to sit and take that examination. So it's not really truly representative of how fast the agency is processing the applications. And the reason we have to do it that way, that's a product of us having to approve an applicant to sit for the exam, then go take the exam, and us wait for them to pass the exam before we can actually process the application to conclusion. So don't panic, don't read too much into that. Everybody's actually doing really well. Our numbers are looking good, but that MFT number, if you don't understand what all goes into that, it can throw you off. But everything looks good. Complaint resolution numbers still continue to trend down. I mean, the average processing times, the number of pending complaints continues to trend downward. I can't remember exactly. Patrick, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I've also included on 3B your year-end fiscal date information there, just kind of your budget information. You know, I'll try to answer any questions on that I can if you need to, but basically this at this time at the end of Q2, we had 34% of the year remaining and 35% of the budget remaining. So we're on track there. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Next item is going to be the enforcement status report under 3D. This is the one where we kind of get into the numbers. This is what everybody harkens back to the days of why BHEC came to be. You'll see total number of pending complaints is 347 across all the boards. That's a stark difference. And I think it's even lower than that now. Patrick, do you happen to know what it is kind of as we sit here now?
I don't, but I do think that the number is probably lower because I know some of these ones on the year, the lower part of that report have been taken care of. So, you know,
Okay.
2019, I know is at least a 1 instead of a 2. And so those numbers are lower.
Okay. So everything is rocking along good there. We're not seeing any problems, any aberrations or anything like that. You can kind of tell looking at the complaint, the number of complaints received is kind of trended downward in Q2. It's cyclical. You'll see it was holding steady between 150 and 165 there for a while. I suspect that will trend back up. I think it's probably just a hiccup in the numbers why it trended down, but any questions on that? All right, hearing none. Of course, you've got all the agreed orders and the dismissals in your board packet. I'm not going to go over those unless there's any questions. Patrick will have to answer those, but that's there for your review. SIPAC update. Patrick, anything significant going on in SIPAC?
Nothing really other than there's now 36 jurisdictions where they have joined SIPAC, and Texas has got 847 authorities to practice interstate jurisdiction, and there's almost 9,000. There's 807.67 is the total amount that are of all the jurisdictions that have issued authority to practice. So those are people that can practice here in Texas. I guess you'd subtract the Texas number out of that. So there's about 8,000 out of state people that can practice here.
Yeah, that's more than what the number of licensed psychologists we have in Texas that we license. We now have more out-of-state people eligible to practice under SIPAC than what we currently license in Texas. And we get that for $6,000 a year. That's what it costs us to be a member of SIPAC. So that's a pretty good ROI, in my opinion there. And I think that's what you'll generally see on other compacts as they come online eventually. And we'll talk about what happened on counseling in just a minute. Tracked bills, that's going to be the other big one. I'm going to try to hustle through this. I gave you guys a PDF that lists all the bills, and then I created bookmarks in it so that you didn't have to look through the detritus, just the junk that didn't make it. The big thing, and I'm just going to jump to the ones that I've got highlighted for you. The big thing is the state budget. We still don't know yet. House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 30, which is the budget, and then the supplemental appropriations bill. We still don't know yet. I can give you, the conference committee has made decisions on House Bill 1, and I can summarize that for you. Basically, they have given us, they have given all state employees across the board, except for EDs, they've given them a 10% salary increase. And then the House had originally opted for an additional 5% across the board for most state agencies. The Senate carved that when they went to conference committee, that got pulled out, and the Senate and House agreed that BHEC would get additional funding to increase salaries for its attorney positions, because we had like a 40% turnover rate in our staff attorneys. So it was the highest turnover rate. And that was true not just with BHEC, but across the board. All state agencies were having a very difficult time retaining attorneys. The private sector was killing us on that. So that's something that they're trying to address in House Bill 1. They did give us everything we asked for staff training. It's not much, I mean, but it was literally everything we asked for. It's budget dust compared to the state budget, but we're still waiting on that to be finalized. I don't even see it on any of the calendars yet, which is a little bit concerning, considering I think tomorrow is the deadline for stuff to pass, but I'm sure somebody smarter than me has that under control over there. The next big one is 1167. You heard Dr. Sarter make reference to this. This was filed by Representative Romero in the House. It's an MFT, LPC, and social work. I call it kind of a cleanup or a licensure by endorsement bill to be a more accurate depiction of it. Basically, what the important guts of that bill says, if you're an MFT licensed in another jurisdiction, then we don't have to look at your supervised experience, your basically your supervised practice, your training experience. We can just, the other states already vetted you. We'll take them at your word. You know, you got to pass the exam. You got to still pass all our criteria, but we don't have to look at your supervised experience. LPC, same way, except they put a contingency that you have to have been in independent practice for at least 2 years before you can come in under that endorsement. So Dr. Taylor, Chair Hallbauer, this is going to resolve a lot of the problems that y'all see where individuals are licensed for umpteen years in another jurisdiction, but they got licensed in a jurisdiction that only requires 2,000 hours. And then they come here and we tell them, well, you got to go back under supervision for 1,000 hours. And y'all are all ticked off, rightfully so. They're ticked off. And because it's patently unfair, this is going to resolve that problem for y'all. Social work, same thing, except social work then modified it to 1 year instead of 2 years. So you got MFT with, you just need to be licensed. Counseling, you need to have 2 years, and social work, you need to have 1 year. Would have been nice if it was all the same thing across, you know, standardized. But hey, we take what we can get, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I think a lot of thanks needs to go to TAMFT and their lobbyists and TCA and their lobbyists, because they carried a lot of water on this and they worked some magic. If anybody's been following the legislature this year, getting anything through has been a task of Heracles to get anything through there, and so they did it. Now it technically hasn't made it through the calendar yet, but it's on local and consent in the Senate today. And I'm watching my email while we're in this meeting, so that if it comes through, I'll let you know, but I don't expect any problems out of it. The next item is going to be House Bill 2453 is the digital licenses bill. Representative Guillen filed this bill. Basically what this will do is, instead of issuing the paper wall certificates, we can eventually move to a digital license. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because this is going to be the way things go eventually, whether anybody likes it or not. This is where we're headed. I think it will be a good way to go once we get there, but they're just going ahead and giving agencies the authority. It's not a shall, you don't have to do it. It's just an option for us to do right now. But that is something I would like us to explore once we kind of get past the noise of legislation. We get some other things, some other housekeeping things we need to take care of. We can start looking at that as a bell and whistle to put in our repertoire. There was a House Bill 2522 that would have required us to develop an alternative to the national examination for social workers. It did not go anywhere. I don't think it got a hearing. So it's dead. House Bill 2557, which is the counseling compact, it did not receive a hearing over in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. It made it through the House, but then it died in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. House Bill 2698, I don't think it's going to become law, but the only reason I put it in here is because when I read it, it seemed like such a simple idea and something easy and good to do. I just went ahead and did it. It requires us to put on our website links to the Veterans Crisis Network, which is a governmental run program, and then the suicide hotline, and again, another governmental run program. I just went ahead and did it, and I reached out to Representative Guillen and said, look, regardless of whether your bill makes it, just so you know, we thought it was a good idea and we went ahead and did it. So he was like, thank you, I appreciate that. So that's already on our website. It's on our homepage if you look down on the right-hand side. House Bill 3130. Okay, this one's heart's in the right place. I understand what they're trying to do. I'm afraid there's going to be a pretty significant unintended consequence. The short version of this is, it says if you're a domestic violence victim, and there's all kinds of different variations of that, how it's defined in the bill, but if you're a domestic violence victim and you submit a form developed either by the Attorney General or the agency, then the BHEC would have to keep your name, all your address, your contact information, kind of all your personally identifiable information confidential. We couldn't release it. Now, the problem with that is if you do that, if you're a domestic violence victim and you submit one of these forms, what are you going to do whenever you try to get on an insurance panel and they submit a request for verification to us and say, hey, Susie Jane over here has applied to be on our panel. We need to verify her licensure. And I'm going to be like, I don't know who that is. You know, we cannot, basically you become a ghost in the system. The only thing that we're going to be able to do is if you have the license number, we can say that is an active license. But the name itself, we cannot give out names. That's going to be, I'm afraid that's going to be problematic for like insurance paneling, employment verification, licensure verification. I'm a little concerned about how the mechanics of that are going to work. Now we'll wait and see. I'm going to visit with some of the other EDs and kind of see how they're going to handle it at their agency. But I don't remember that ever being discussed in any of the hearings. I wasn't asked for a fiscal note on that bill until the very, very end. It doesn't carry a fiscal note. It's not really going to cost us anything to implement because most of the cost would be covered whenever we implement Senate Bill 510 later on. But just kind of be on the lookout. That may be something we have to tackle later on, is how to handle this, where a domestic violence victim comes to us and says, I don't want you to disclose any information about me. And I'm like, okay, well, that means we're not going to be able to tell people who, you know, if they give us your name, I'm not going to be able to confirm that you're a licensee with us. So just kind of keep that in mind, keep that in the back of your mind. House Bill 4075 did not make it. It was a companion bill to House Bill 1167. Senator Zaffarini tried to do a committee substitute for House Bill 1167 when it was in the Senate that would have incorporated 4075 as well. But basically, there were some provisions in 4075, and I think it was the reciprocity language. The language that would have given me the authority to seek reciprocity for LPC, social work, and marriage and family therapy, they did not like that. And so we had to jettison that part of the bill in order to save 1167. So as of right now, psychology can seek a reciprocity agreements with other jurisdictions, but none of the other boards can. And that was what we were trying to correct, part of what we were trying to correct through 4075, but that didn't make it. So we'll reload on that and see how we're going to handle that in the future. House Bill 4123, this is a big one. This is where the feds had basically went to all the states and said, all the statutory authority you guys have been relying on for 20 or 30 years to look at our fingerprint background check information is no longer good. We're not going to accept it. You got to go back and get your legislatures to adopt new authority. Well, thank the Lord, we're going into session and we got this bill filed. So hopefully this is going to cure that. The reason why this is one of those, I think people don't realize the importance of this bill. If this hadn't happened, all of that one-time fingerprinting that we went through would have been for naught. We wouldn't have been able to use wrapback. It just would have been a complete waste of everybody's time. So this is a big deal. So I'm really rooting for it to go, and I think it will. I think I saw this morning where it's actually passed. Senate Bill 271. Nothing you guys need to worry about. It's a lot of work on the agencies. It's homework for the agencies. And anytime you see a IT security bill, you can just guarantee that that's going to be a lot of homework for your agency staff to deal with. They're very tedious. They're very time consuming to do those reports. For good reason. I'm not fussing about it, but it's a lot of work. SB 490, the itemized billing rule. Y'all all should have been quaking in your boots whenever that thing got filed, because it would have required everybody to do itemized billing. Patrick and I talked yesterday and I said, look that thing up and see if it's been changed or if it still requires our folks to do itemized billing. It does not. Y'all were carved out of it. Individual providers were carved out. Now it's just hospitals. I think, Patrick, is it just hospitals? Is that who it applies to now?
It says licensed facilities, certified facilities. It includes hospitals. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that are now required to do the itemized billing. Because I know how difficult that can be to comply with that stuff. So y'all are out of it. My fear was alleviated on that. SB 510, it's a pretty big one. This is Senator Perry's bill. It's a confidentiality bill. Basically, this says we can no longer give out home addresses, telephone numbers. We weren't giving out social security numbers, but dates of birth, all of that, any personally identifiable information is off books now. We can't give it out. This is going to require a programming change. The problem with this bill is some of it is an unfunded mandate. We submitted a fiscal note saying, hey, this is going to cost some money because we're going to have to change the database. Right now, when we collect your address, we don't ask whether that's a home address, business address, PO box, whatever. So we have no way of knowing whether the addresses we have are home addresses. So we're going to have to make some changes to the database to try to figure out is the address you've given us, is it a home address, and therefore it's confidential. I think you're probably going to look 15, 16 grand is probably what it's going to end up costing us to do that. We'll have to pay that out of pocket. We did not get any money for that, even though I had submitted a fiscal note for it, saying it would cost us. And all agencies are in the same boat. They didn't give any money to any agency on that. They all just kind of stuck us with that bill. Senate Bill 595. This one, it hasn't gone anywhere, but I know this was going to be kind of important to those of you that practice in the school systems, because it was going to require some additional informed consent, but I don't think it's gone anywhere yet. SB 821, review of agencies. This is one where the next time we undergo sunset review, they are going to look to see, okay, what kind of personal information do you guys sell? The only thing we sell that can be considered personal information is the mailing list. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is when this bill passes, and I think it already has, this list I've got here is outdated. I think this has already passed. This is basically going to sign the death nail, the death warrant for mailing lists. We're not going to do them anymore, because at that point it becomes too much of a liability to do mailing lists. And we're going to have to stop doing those, because I don't want to be accused of selling information, even though it's information that people have, that is technically public until some of these other laws kick in. But long story short, we're probably going to stop doing mailing lists because of this bill here. The ledge has kind of shown an affinity for, they don't want us doing that kind of stuff. So we're going to respect that privacy and their wish. Senate Bill 1045. If we get sued and we lose and we have to appeal it, it will now go to a special court of appeals. The 15th Court of Appeals will no longer be under the jurisdiction of the 3rd Court of Appeals here in Austin. They're creating a special court. I think this is going to be kind of the business court, but it's also going to have exclusive jurisdiction over appeals involving agencies, constitutionality of statutes, that kind of thing. I don't think this Court of Appeals will hear like disciplinary appeals, like if you guys revoke somebody's license and they appeal it to district court and lose there, and then they appeal up to the appellate court. I don't think it will go there, but I'm not yet sure on that. We'll see. But anyway, I'm just putting it on there to let you know we're now under the jurisdiction of a new appellate court. SB 2256. This is the online continuing education tracking bill. This is actually up for second reading today in the House. I'll know more about whether or not it is passed. Basically, what this would do is require us to use a cloud-based providers like CE Zoom, CE Broker, something like that to manage our continuing education. So we'll see if that passes today. It's up for second reading. And then SB 2527. This one is a very difficult read. This was it modifies chapter 111 of the Occupations Code, which historically you guys had been exempt from. And I remember when it was passed, because I was part of the discussions on why mental health providers should be exempted from it. But now with these changes, you are now brought into chapter 111. I think though, it's incredibly complicated to read this bill and this area of the law. I don't think it's practically going to change anything for you, because it seems to be geared at the practice of telemedicine, telehealth, when there are prescriptions involved. And of course, none of you guys have prescriptive authority. So I think probably we'll be okay. I don't think it's going to jump up and bite us, but I'm not going to guarantee that. And this was something I kind of talked with the state associations about when this was going on. I'm like, I think I know what this bill does, but I can't guarantee that it's not going to suck us in and have some kind of unintended consequence. So, and I think it's going to go the distance if it hasn't already. So just kind of we're going to have to watch this one, chapter 111, to see what happens there. But anyway, that's all I have on the legislative update. Does anybody have any questions on those bills?
It's quite thorough.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I think that I appreciate the color and perspective.
Yeah.
I think we all do.
Next item is going to be the Attorney General opinion, the KP 0426. This opinion is in response to our request where we asked, I'm just gonna boil it down. Do we have the authority if we're conducting rule review and a member board has a rule, part of which is anti-competitive or administratively inconsistent or violates some good governance concern, can we strike out the offending part only and leave the rest of the rule in place? Or would we have to strike the whole rule if the member board did not want to change the rule? And short version, the Attorney General says you don't have line item veto authority. It's an all or nothing game with you. So if we get into a loggerhead with a member board and the member board says, well, I don't want to change that rule, and we're like, well, it's got a major problem and we can't readopt it, your only option now is to say, okay, well, we're going to just not readopt the whole thing. Now, I'll tell you what I really take away from the opinion is a message to us in the member boards is y'all better play nice together. Y'all need to work together on this and don't allow yourselves to get in a loggerhead where this kind of an issue would raise its head. So that was more what I took away with it, as the ED. I'm like, okay, I just got to make sure we don't ever find ourselves in that position because we don't want to be in that spot.
I think what's interesting though is that we all wear two hats.
Yeah.
I mean, today we have our BHEC hats on and we all go back to our member boards wearing our member board hats. And so it's when you say we, it's really important that we're talking about the BHEC hat.
Yes,
this moment.
correct. Yes. Yeah, you're not here as a site board member
That's
today.
right.
You are you're John Bolinwood's councilman.
Right.
So anyway, that opinion's out. You can read it and there it is. The next item is going to be, let's see, it's going to be the Ken Paxton opinion 443 on school psychology. Long story short, we do have the authority to let LSSPs use the title school psychologist. And it was kind of like a duh. When I read it, it was kind of like, duh, yeah, you have that authority. So I felt kind of dumb after getting that back and submitting the question, but
this was, admittedly, this was a belt and suspenders approach to make sure I read, and I'm not a lawyer, but I read the law and the way that the law refers to school psychologists and LSSPs. The legislature usually is pretty good at being intentional in what they call things and what they do. And the fact that they called it both to me was pretty clear. And the Attorney General agreed as well.
Yes. So that just bolsters what Ms. Arnold was talking about in public comment, that our, the psych boards, and I think what our decision today will be, you're supported by the law if you choose to adopt that change in the LSSP title.
We're on very, very sure footing.
Yes. Yeah. You're on bedrock. The next item is going to be, I just want to give y'all an update again on my conversations with ARC, which is that it's the research arm for U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When I reached out to them initially, they were like, honestly, they said, what you're asking for is even probably too big for the federal government to tackle. We don't even think we could handle doing a task or a research project of that size, but they did encourage me to submit a formal, what they call a nomination, which is just you submitting an issue for consideration by ARC. And so I did that. And then lo and behold, I kind of thought, oh, that's the last I'll hear of them. And then I guess they tasked it to somebody out in the VA in Washington and said, since you kind of work in a closed system where you would have access to patient records, which is what you would need to do this kind of analysis, they were like, see if you guys can develop a question and work with Daryl to come up with something that might get him close to what he's looking for. Long story short, I've worked with the the folks from the VA in Washington, and I forget their names, but you've got the materials there. We're still working on formulating the question, but it's not dead. I thought it was dead, but it's not. We're still moving forward. It might not look exactly like what I had originally posed to them, but that was something we all knew, or I knew going in. I'm not a research scientist. I don't necessarily know how to pose a question, but they do. So we're working together to come up with something that we think could be useful to us all. Let's see, next is going to be, and along those lines also, I also included some material. ASWB is also working on, they've kind of got a research project running parallel to this, where they're looking at empirical support for the regulatory requirements of social work boards. And I've included some material there for you. Chair Brumley actually sits on that committee, that research committee that farms out those projects. So that's pretty cool, I think. He's got some pretty unique insight into that. We can probably tickle his brain about it the next time he's here. But anyway, just know that we've got kind of an inroad in ASWB there. That's one of the benefits of being members in these types of organizations, and you guys sitting on the boards or on committees, is you've got some influence whenever we come in and run into issues like this. So Chair Brumley's working on that for us on ASWB from their end. The last item under 3 that I'm going to talk about is, and I'd mentioned this all to you in an email, and I think you all got emails from the state auditor's office of auditors. We're under a process audit right now from the SAO. They're still in kind of the collecting phase. They haven't started their field work yet, where they will come out and I think actually watch how we do things. They're kind of learning how we do things through our paperwork, rules and policies and that kind of thing right now. But everything's rocking along. Nobody's been arrested. That's always a good sign at this early phase. And you don't want to see anybody with badges and guns come through the door and take you out. So I talked to the auditors, I don't know, it's probably a week or so ago, just because I told them, I said, look, I'm going to the council. They're probably going to want to know, can you give me just some kind of an update? And they're like, no, everything's rocking along fine. We're not having any kinds of cooperation problems. So no problems, no hiccups there. But we're still a long way from the conclusion of that audit. And that's it for topic number 3.
Very good. Moving on to action items. Review and consideration of licensing disciplinary recommendations from member boards. Daryl, are you running this discussion here on 4A, or do we have anything specific to talk about there?
I'll kind of outline it. Patrick, you take it over. Basically, this is a applicant that was denied by staff. She appealed it to the board, the social work board. That board ended up denying it as well. It's what we call a Chapter 108 denial, which means the criminal history disqualifies the applicant from licensure. It's a non-discretionary type of disqualification. And Patrick, you got anything else you want to add to it?
No, it was appealed to SOA as well. There was a proposal for decision issued that agreeing with the denial and agreeing that under Chapter 108, which applies to social work and psychology, that it says shall deny, it's not discretionary. And so the SOA ALJ recommended denial, and it went back to the board. The board also agreed. There is a final decision and order that they approved and recommended to send to BHEC for your consideration and hopefully approval. Ms. Robertson West was sent notice of this meeting, and if she's here, we typically on the notice we tell her, she has 10 minutes to just sort of state her case. No new evidence will be presented, but she can address the council. So I don't know if she's here. She could raise her hand and we can maybe bring her in.
Ms. Robertson West, if you're out there, could you raise your hand so we can identify you in the list of attendees? I'll check. I don't see any hands. Let me check these 2 phone calls real quick. Caller, are you by any chance Ms. Robertson West?
Ending in 1913.
Yeah. Okay. Caller ending in 3771. Are you by any chance Ms. Robertson West? *6 to unmute. Okay, nope, they hung up, guess not. Okay, no, nobody's here to speak.
Okay. Any discussion? It doesn't sound like, under the law, it's pretty straightforward that we
You don't
are
have any
not, we
discretion.
don't have any discretion here, so.
Yeah.
We do need a motion though,
Yes,
correct? Is
yeah.
there any discussion? Entertaining a motion?
You just need a motion
So
to
moved.
approve the order.
All right, it's been moved by Ms. Smith,
Seconded.
by Dr. Skoma. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying, unless there's any discussion. No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
say no. All right, we've denied it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Moving on to B, update discussion from member boards regarding efforts to streamline licensure requirements in accordance with the December 2022 report from the Senate Special Committee to Protect All Texans. So floor is open for discussion or updates on things being done back at your member boards in response to the report from the Senate or from the legislature.
John, I'll go ahead if that's all right.
Yes, sir, go for it.
LPC board met April 28th. Our specific direction was that it opened to all board members, please, to submit feedback to us on, we focused on streamlining of licensure, and that's what we requested of our board members. The big caveat on here is that at that time, we were kind of closely watching the status of our efforts to have Texas join the counseling compact. At this time, it looks like that is not going to happen for this legislative session, in which case we will refocus for the next one. But knowing where that stands right now, we will be shifting back to if we're not joining the counseling compact, what options do we have? And again, focusing on streamlining licensure. That's where things stood on the counseling end. Dr. Taylor, anything to add with that?
No, that sums it up. We are, ever since we went through the sunset process several years ago, and with the creation of BHEC, we have been looking for as many efficiencies as possible. I think to the point to where even Daryl will ask us to stop looking for efficiencies. And we start asking the question, is this just being efficient for the sake of being efficient? We want to make sure that we're not diluting our license or the value of our license, such as education or supervision, but at the same time, we're always looking for ways to streamline this process and welcome more students into the profession so that we can have a bolder and stronger mental health workforce.
The 3,000 hour requirement for out-of-state licensees looking to come to Texas and the verification of those hours, that is a big hiccup for counselors coming to Texas. Should that get resolved in the legislature, that will help as well. We are optimistic that we will get there on that one. That's it from our end.
Very good. I'll speak a little bit to psychology, what we're doing. The fruit of a lot of that discussion is actually coming up later on the agenda today for what we're simply calling a school psychologist, which is plainly a school psychologist. We're one of 2 states in the nation that does not call an LSSP a school psychologist until hopefully later today. That's just kind of I feel like the first, if I describe it this way, some people might get alarmed. It's almost kind of the first salvo. That said, we're not there's a lot of bad ideas that we've talked about that have died. I think the focus from what I'm seeing in our discussions within the psychology board is looking for new pathways into the profession, looking at educational requirements, degree plans, remediation, ways to go back without going back to square one. How do you achieve the standard, again, without going back to square one? So that's a lot of what we're looking at, and I'm hopeful and optimistic that we're going to find some progress on those things in the year ahead. Dr. Cartwright, if you have anything to add too, I'll feel free.
I mean, not really. Again, also, we've been looking at, rural environments, allowing accessibility, supervision experience for folks in rural areas. I think that's something that we've been trying to, increase access to care. And I think that's just been the key. But the points that John brought up are all kind of the focal points of our board at this point.
I'll go ahead and speak to the MFT board, if that's all right.
Go for it. Dr. Taylor, I didn't see your hand up. We'll get right back to you, Dr. Taylor.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to ask you, don't worry, Dr. Scum, I'm going to also get you to chime in. We last met on April the 14th. Great meeting, and we actually traveled. So it was our first meeting since COVID to meet in person. And Mary Hardin Baylor hosted us, and that was amazing, and got to interact a little bit with the students. And so that was great. We have been looking at this for quite some time, and we felt like that we've already been executing many of the steps they wanted us to. If this bill that we're all hoping for goes ahead and makes it, then we'll have changed a huge barrier in our state for getting more MFTs by focusing on, if they are fully licensed and they have been practicing out of state, then we welcome them to come and practice in the state of Texas. And hopefully we will one day be able to also have our membership practice with current clients that are seeing, and if they have a different house somewhere, that we can continue to provide them. In addition, we really looked at for any kind of biasness in it, and determined we didn't feel like the exam was biased, that perhaps the biasness comes in the ability to take time off to study for it if you're working. So it's not really within the exam per se, it's the opportunities that are affordable to be able to take off and study, unfortunately. So right now we're not doing anything on that. And we have continued to tweak our jurisprudence exam to where we have not as many BHEC questions and more MFT questions, because we kind of got a little overloaded on the BHEC questions. And then our next meeting is September 22nd. No, not our next meeting, but we're going to have a town hall meeting on September 22nd at noon for our membership to attend and give feedback and talk about concerns or where they would like to see the profession go. Something more to that.
No, I think you did a good job with that. There are a number of things we're considering. A lot of them would require code changes, so we're not sure what all we could do. But out of this, I'm excited about the stakeholders meeting. I think that will be a good step forward to hear. There's just a wisdom and a multitude of counselors, so we may get some good ideas out of that.
Good deal. Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention how interesting a name change is, because much like the school psychologist, we changed the name from licensed professional counselor intern to associate, and that seems to have made such a wonderful impact for our associates now. So I just think those small changes, they really can have big impact. So I'm very happy to see that you were all doing that and that the rest of us are doing it as well.
Good deal. Anybody else?
The one thing I would add for social work, since we don't have a social work representative here, is Sarah, the board admin for social work. She reminded me they have eliminated, they had a kind of a roving window for supervised experience that was constantly moving. So they've eliminated that now. We called it the 5-year rule. They've also eliminated, they've just cut down a lot of the bookends on some of the rules that were catching a lot of people on supervised experience. So they've made a lot of changes that are really helping practitioners who go through a non-traditional route, or maybe take a little longer to acquire the supervised experience needed to gain licensure, and that we're getting hung up in the rules. And from what everybody could tell, and everybody agreed, they were more than qualified to do it. It's just, it was an arbitrary end date that we had in place for their supervised experience. So they've done away with a lot of that. I have to say, the social work board has made a lot of progress in their rules on cleaning up a lot of problematic areas. So, which is part also why you see a lot of their numbers, that's such significant improvement in their numbers there, so.
I'm gonna call, I think, a little bit of an audible here, Daryl, with your permission here. Are you okay? We're gonna, CE broker would be next.
Mhm.
I want to take that in a minute. After that would be evaluation of the executive director, which we have to go into executive session for. Obviously that's going at the end. Can you do the personnel manual right now, and then we'll
Yeah.
go back to CE broker, and then we'll get into rulemaking.
Okay.
That feels like an efficient use of our
Yeah.
time.
So the personnel manual, I've got.
And hang on, we're going to point E, everybody, on 4E. Take it away.
Yeah, the personnel manual, I'm asking for the council to approve two changes to it. One, I'm adding a policy on equitable salary increases. In order for me to do that, give an equity-based raise to a staff member, we've got to have a policy on hand. That's a requirement in the law. And so we've added that to the personnel manual. And then I'm also cleaning up, when I was looking at the personnel manual, I noticed that it referenced under the fraud detection part of our manual, it referenced another plan that we don't have. So I cleaned that up so that the personnel manual itself is the plan. It was referring us to a plan that we don't have yet. The substance of what was in the personnel manual is basically what we needed. So I mean, it's just a cleanup provision there, and I'm asking you all to approve those two changes to the personnel manual.
Any questions or discussion there? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
You want to include both of those together?
Yes, sir.
As long as
Just
there's no,
adopt the revised version of the personnel manual.
I'd make the motion that we adopt that revised.
been moved by Dr. Skoma.
I second.
We've got multiple seconds. I think I saw Mr. Hallbauer first. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
Aye.
Is that an affirmative, Ms. Smith? I think,
Janine, did you vote for or against the revised personnel manual?
No, I voted for. I raised my hand.
sorry, yeah, okay, I was making sure
It was
a
just
little
a
late.
delayed. It
Yeah.
looked like you voted no on it.
And any opposed, say no. It's unanimous, the ayes have it, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Did we give CE broker any time constraints of?
Like 10 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is CE broker ready to go?
Yeah, let me get Catherine and Ashley over here. Hey, Catherine, Ashley, could y'all raise your hands out there in the audience? It'll help me. Here's Ashley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is Catherine speaking.
Okay, we got Catherine here. I don't remember how we go. There we go. Okay, Catherine, I've promoted you to panelist so that you can turn your video on.
I'm going to,
Ashley, I've promoted you to panelist as well. You can now turn your video on.
Good deal.
good
Yeah.
morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting CE Broker to present to you all today. And just to confirm that I hear 10 minutes.
Yes. Yes,
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go fast then, and hopefully I can share my screen, but thank you so much for inviting us in. 1 second here. Let me just stop my video. Yes, everyone's able to see my screen okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. And I do have a quick presentation to give you a broad overview of CE Broker, a little bit about our history and our growth and how the system can work together with your licensing database. Time won't permit, but I've always loved to do a demo of the platform. But so to put it briefly, CE Broker, we're a unique software company. We partner with regulatory boards and licensing agencies and offer a comprehensive CE tracking, auditing, and full lifecycle management system where the board staff, educational providers, and the licensed professionals can all access one single, easy-to-use platform with the goal to really simplify the process of complying with continuing education requirements. Everything we do is for the licensed professional and the stakeholders that serve them. So for over 20 years, our company has supported licensing boards, agencies, associations, and employers to work better together. And through our products, our services, and support that modernize CE management, we're just simply helping millions of professionals we serve to stay clear to work. We do offer this service at no financial cost. There's no cost or to any of the primary primary stakeholders. This is a busy screen, and we recognize and understand that it's complex. CE management is notoriously a headache both for licensees and for the board staff. There's a lot to manage, and it's why our goal is really to streamline your operations, drive greater efficiency and effectiveness, and really ease the unnecessary administrative burdens for you and your licensed professionals. Ashley Cottrell is here with me. She's a member of our external affairs team. They're responsible for building and maintaining relationships with key stakeholders for our partners' benefit. For instance, her team will prioritize meaningful relationships with both state and national associations, along with elected officials and high-level government administrative offices, really to support continuing education modernization. This is a helpful graphic that really breaks down how CE Broker works and where the data is flowing. So you can see information comes from licensees, from providers, from the state board. And when all three stakeholders are using the system, all that information is aggregated onto one platform to create your own comprehensive compliance engine, if you will. And we customize this for each jurisdiction that we work with and for each of the professions under BHAC. We'll tailor the system to be reflective of all your rules and your requirements, both for the licensed professionals that you serve, as well as continuing education providers. A little bit about our history and our growth. We were founded back in 2002. We built this this platform to form a partnership with the Florida Department of Health, and that's how we became rooted in the continuing education space. We now, in 2010, built probably the most popular feature is our mobile app for all those licensed professionals that like to do and manage everything on the go and on their phones. 2012, we built an employer solution. This is an automated license verification platform for large hospital systems, healthcare systems across the country. And in 2019, we launched a marketplace, which is basically where all approved educational providers can list and they can host their content on the same platform, and then they automatically report those completions back to the board. We have a lot of cool things coming up. We're just about to launch a partnership with the IMLCC and serve about 6 umbrella agencies. But since all of that, in the last 6 or 7 years, we've grown quite a bit and now serve 250 licensing boards, integrate with 15,000 educational providers. We have about 5 million licensees in the system and we currently track for about 350 unique profession types. So needless to say, if the profession has some type of competency or continuing education component, we can track that here. And so these 3 main stakeholders, right, the boards, the licensees, the educational providers, all have their own unique login or portal, their own portal into the system, where the boards can employ a modern configurable software to perform a lot of the tasks and eliminate paperwork associated with CE compliance. Licensees will log in and have a clear outline of what their requirements are, direct them to board approved courses, be able to take and find those courses on the same place. And then of course, the educational providers are able to list and host that content all in the same place and report. We have a great deal of success in your professions. The Florida, South Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan all have composite boards similar to BHAC. Tennessee, social workers, West Virginia, both counselors and social work, Wyoming, North Carolina, psychology board. And I forgot to list here, most recently is Kentucky MFT. They're in the very early stages of implementing CE Broker. Just to look at each of the functionality from each of these suites, we call them, right? For the staff, we transformed the audit process to completely automate that, eliminating the paperwork. And when records are collected in one place, then it makes it very easy to verify and quickly verify licensees' information. and or automate that compliance check at the time of renewal. This has really helped to increase compliance rates, reduce labor on many of the state agencies that we work with. And we support a couple different methods here. And so we're very flexible. We always want to work with the board's workflow. Option 2 is that standard post-renewal audit. Most boards do a percentage of after the renewal window closes, but we can still automate a lot of that where licensees are uploading and responding to that audit through CE Broker. But option 1 is called what we call Compliance Connect, or CE at renewal. We kind of interchange that. And what that means is this is where we're actually integrated with your licensing database. So when licensees go to renew their license at your website, your licensing database will ping or query CE Broker in real time to check what is their current compliance status, and essentially get a call out that says they're either complete or not complete. At that point, the board can enforce a hard stop or a soft stop or both. A hard stop would just not permit the licensee to move forward with that renewal if they are shown to be non-compliant or incomplete. A soft stop will allow them to, will permit them to go through the renewal, but they'll get a pop-up window, basically a little tap on the shoulder that says, hey, you're not complete in CE Broker, and kind of a warning that says that you may be subject to an audit. Many agencies are moving towards this. Florida Department of Health, of course, our flagship client, has reported back to us they've saved over $500,000 annually just by moving from a more automated process to from a paper process to an automated process. The Louisiana medical board had 7 people on their staff just managing, because they have a composite board as well. 7 people just managing the continuing education component. They reduced that to 2 people and were able to reallocate those resources to other parts of the agency. So it really is driving efficiency within the agency. The suite also helps the board manage any continuing education approvals if necessary. So that's a feature in there where educational providers can submit their application to the board. All the communication between the board and the CE providers are handled right inside this, right inside the platform. Reminders and renewals go out to them as well. And so it's just a paperless history of everything that goes on in terms of that application process. In the provider suite, they have their own suite of tools that allow them to access this platform and essentially just take the burden away from the board. Again, if the board does do provider applications or course applications, that can be done digitally, eliminate that paper trail. And once they're approved or are already accredited basically by the national or state associations, they can add their courses to our library and be in front of millions of licensees. But essentially, you'll see here that we've created a very large marketplace. We have about 15,000 board-approved educational providers that are listing and hosting. It's an option for them to host as well. We have about 20,000 completions reported on average per day from the educational providers. And this really helps the board staff to ensure the accuracy of that reporting. Licensees prefer to take courses from those educational providers that are reporting on their behalf. And we have about 1,000 courses that are taken per day on the marketplace. All of this is all included in that single platform. And we've made it easy for those educational providers to report. They can do so through a couple different options, as you can see here. Being integrated, some of the larger educational providers are actually integrated with our platform. So that essentially means that if I go to their website to take a course, through that integration, once completed, will be reflected automatically into the licensee's account. And then finally, the licensed professionals, we've designed a lot of tools to help them track their CE, be able to manage renewals, get renewal notifications, manage their certificates and multiple licenses in one place, be able to store their documents really digitally and understand their requirements a lot easier, right? The whole goal is to really deliver those requirements in a very easy to digest manner and then direct them to those board approved courses for them to satisfy anything that might be missing. We get we get a lot of feedback from the professionals that we serve. You can just see some of the quotes here, but they love it. And when I talk about this system to people that are retired in the industry, in the healthcare profession, they're like, oh, I wish we had something like this as I was in the workforce. The account options for licensees, and this is where where CE Broker can generate a little bit of revenue. This is where where it helps to keep this the cost or the solution to be no cost solution, essentially, for all those stakeholders, for educational providers, for the licensee, and for the board. The basic account is the no cost account. It has everything a licensee needs to report, find courses, get renewal notifications, access anything that's reported, course history, track multiple licenses. We have about 15% of those of our 5 million licensees just stick with the basic account because it's a pretty robust tools that are built for managing CE. But for some of those that want a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more advanced features and tools, our professional account includes a personalized compliance transcript. So it'll list all of their hours, everything, what has been completed, what's missing, and break down those categories of CE. That's $40 a year. The concierge account comes with an account manager that they essentially, a licensee can pack up their certificates. They can email them, mail them, fax them to their account manager. They will report on their behalf. They will find and register them for conferences or courses, or basically manage all of the CE for them, except do everything except take the course itself. And that's $125 a year. Those two, we have about 15% of our 5 million licensees that have opted to upgrade to these advanced features and tools for managing their CE. But it is always totally optional and voluntary. In addition to all of that value that we bring to everyone, we have a support center. We have agents that will alleviate the calls and the emails to the staff. We will take care of that. We would never expect the board to be able to answer questions about our software, or how to upload something, or what are my requirements. And you can see we do a huge volume. We did so a lot through the pandemic when there was rules that were changing and deadlines that were waived. So licensees can call us and they can live chat us. They can email. They'll get a response within 24 hours. These agents are available 8 to 8 across the country, Monday through Friday. And this just adds a lot of value. As you can see, we have a high customer satisfaction score with our in-house dedicated support people. I mentioned the mobile app before. It doesn't matter what type of account that you have, whether it's a basic account or one of the paid options. It's free to download on an Apple and or an Android. And it's easy to be able to snap a picture of your certificate and upload that and report your CE through your phone. You can find courses and just, check on your status at any given day as to where you are at in your in each renewal cycle. We partner with a lot of folks, and this is just a few of the licensing systems and associations, and just to create a more integrated, trusted, and comprehensive network of services. Data. This is really important, as it is in today's age. Privacy and security are utmost importance to any organization. Certainly a priority for CE brokers. So our platform is compliant with FIPS, or Federal Information Processing Standards. We have 2 data centers, one in Florida, one in Colorado, that helps ensure stability and uptime and is continually monitored. But more importantly than that, the data that we get is always, well, first of all, it's always owned by the board. We never share it or sell it to any third party. And it's important to note that when we collect data from the board, those are really already, the majority of that information that we collect is already public facing on the license verification pages for consumers, things like license name, number, issue date, expiration date. So that's what we require, and we can set those that transfer of data on either an API or through a secure file transfer protocol to receive that file daily from the board. Implementation, this is really easy too. This is borne by us, so we don't take a lot of resources or time from the staff. So essentially it's an 8 to 12 weeks timeline from start to go live. And during that time, your implementation team will essentially comb through all your rules, all your requirements, both for each of those individual professions under BHAC, as well as the criteria associated with continuing education providers. So we go through all of that and then have a kickoff meeting and a rule verification. We want to ensure that we have 100% accuracy around all the nuances, like if there's a military leave or a disability, or any of those nuances around the rules and the requirements for folks. And then we just go to work. And once we verify 100% that we have everything accurate, then we'll go to work and build out the software to reflect all of those requirements. Once it's live, then we assign you, the BHAC will have a client success manager, one point of contact for the board staff. And you'll get a client engagement manager too. So we're with you all the way. That one point of contact can be about, for any questions, for training. We'll do training as well for your population. Will help, or your client engagement manager will help kind of communicate all this announcements and so forth to your providers as well as to the licensed population. So that's a little bit about the implementation timeline, and essentially we've become the official most trusted full life cycle CE management partner, and we're really committed to powering professional progress. So with that, I'm going to stop and just, how'd I do? 10 minutes. Did I do it?
Okay. Pretty close.
Thank you, Como. So this is, the board, I'm sure will have some questions. If the board doesn't mind, I'm going to start. Your product looks really great in terms of its integration with data, and it looks like it streamlines things for licensees. I say this as somebody, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not in the mental health professions. I'm a commercial real estate broker, and I have a company that designs and manufactures an N95 respirator, and we do it here in the US. I've had to deal with a whole lot of regulation. I'm regulated by the Centers for Disease Control. And I've witnessed a whole lot of in that regulatory environment. Like number one, just a lot of it. And I'm sensitive to adding any type of regulatory burden, which I think this streamlines some things. I'm also sensitive to the idea of cost. And I've seen in my commercial real estate profession, data is everything. And those who control the data, there's sometimes a free option. And I've seen over my career, things that started out either free or very cheap. And then the concern is that either certain features go away and then you get charged for it later. And you guys obviously have a pretty strong presence across the United States. My concern would be in terms of commitments to the free options. If we were to go with someone like y'all, is there a way that we have commitments, either contractually or otherwise, that those free options that we're signing up for our licensees, that they will still have that functionality essentially forever, as long as we are in this relationship with someone like yourselves?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it's always a valid concern amongst a lot of boards that we work with. And, I have to say that we've been doing this, actually, I think this is our 20th year. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. We've been committed to this funding model for over 20 years. The platform is funded, it's sustainable. We never have to shift from this model. If anything, we add features to, and we're always innovating, right? You have to when you're in software, right? It has to be innovative, and you have to continue to improve your technology. So if anything, all I've seen over the years is the fact that we've added features to make, and we're so committed to powering the progress of professionals that we would be adding features, not taking them away. We never have to move away from this model. And we haven't, after 20 years, as I mentioned, we're totally funded and sustainable. So if anything, we'll add things to make life easier and more simple for our licensed professionals.
Cool. I might have another question in a minute, but I'll turn it over to the rest of the board for now. I'm sorry, didn't see who.
Dr. Taylor.
Dr. Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Como, for your time. Just one question for you in regards to data. Are you selling, sharing, monetizing, or distributing data collected in any way?
Never. We do not share data. It is in our it's in our contracts. We never share data. We never sell it. I think sometimes our name kind of sounds like, what are we doing with, we're a broker. But no, we never share data. Again, the data that we do collect from the agencies is that which is already public facing on the license verification pages for consumers. So anything that we collect, and then in some states, if they have a birth date, but there's never any social security numbers or anything like that that we collect, or emails or anything. So yeah, the data is already public facing and it's very secure. And we have all kinds of protocols of security that we continue to work through to keep it safe. Thank you for that question.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Como, for coming, and appreciate the slideshow. That was super helpful.
Okay.
Texas is a big state. And what is your largest number underneath one regulatory board? Like underneath one group, what's the largest number that you service?
That probably would be the Florida Department of Health. I think there's over 1 million licensees. I see you shaking your head, Ashley. Yeah, that the Florida Department of Health, and of course now that's probably our largest. We also so the solution scales really nicely, no matter what whether it's a whole state department. Recently, we just brought on Wisconsin Department of Safety and DSPS. We just brought on New Hampshire Office of Professional Licensure. So we also do work with South Carolina LLR, Florida Department of Health, and a few others in the wings that are on their way, and Michigan, Laura. So the solution scales very nicely, and whether it's an independent board with 500 licensees to whole departments that include millions of licensees.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Como, Ms. Cottrell. Just a question. So if BHEC would adopt this system, are licensees required to use CEBroker? Will they have to use that like across the board for all of their requirements? Are they able to use other companies still and then pull that into the system? Just a question, because I know probably people are asking that.
That's a great question. And a lot of especially in the medical field, we have a number of medical boards, nursing boards who have associations that have trackers. Oftentimes, and Ashley, please jump in, because Ashley's part of those, the external affairs team that develops those partnerships with associations, where if they're reporting into association tracker, we can set up a web service or an API where they're only reporting once. And if we can get that information through an API integration with CEBroker if they're interested. Typically, boards in the past, unless there's a rule change or they create a rule that mandates the use, it's not mandated, right? Most boards say, hey, track your CE any way you want throughout the year. But if you are audited, this is the system that we're using to check on doing license verification. So at that point, then they would have to upload their certificates or their documentation or their proof or their transcript from somewhere else up into CEBroker. In that scenario.
Okay, so they can basically upload documents and proof of their CEs.
Yeah. We'll work with associations if there's some that prefer to use that, and see how we can integrate with them so they're not reporting twice, because we don't want to add burden in terms of reporting and receive a transcript from another type of tracker, if you will.
Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Thank you.
This is John. And I think the question was essentially exclusivity. We're talking about although it may not cost the licensee something, we're talking about exclusively
Yes.
using this.
Yeah, Dr. Cartwright, I think the whole reason we kind of brought this is we're talking about using this system exclusively to manage and track continuing education. Now, what you were asking is, could somebody else use a different system? The answer would be no. What we're contemplating is just using one system. If what you were asking is, could somebody do continuing education through somebody that's not in CE Broker's marketplace? I think the answer is yes, they could. So we're not talking about limiting the pool of CE providers to only those people on CE Broker's marketplace. That's not what we're talking about.
Well, I was making sure of. I just, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry if I misunderstood that question.
Mr. Hallbauer.
Thank y'all for being here. Give me just a second because my first questions are for Daryl. Daryl, this would have to be at the BHEC level, correct? It couldn't be one specific board and not another?
Correct. It's a BHEC issue.
Okay, and my follow-up question is, can it be optional or does it have to be mandatory?
It defeats the purpose if it's optional.
How so?
Because then we would have to maintain a separate system for those that didn't elect to use it.
So they couldn't default to just what we do now?
That's what I mean. We'd have to keep our current process available. And then we would also have this. And now we're having to look in two different places, and there's two different ways there would be two different ways to handle audits, two different ways in CE Broker, you would be required to upload all your continuing education so that it would then ping the system and tell you that you could renew. In our system, if you opted not to use CE Broker, you would just check an affirmation box that you had done everything, but nobody would actually check that unless you were audited. So we would handle things, and I don't even know how to do that. And that's why it's really an all or nothing thing. Either we do it or we don't do it. I don't want to get into the business of having two different systems to handle this. That kind of will defeat the whole purpose.
Okay. Ms. Como, how do you promote the CE providers that you offer, and how does in order to get to where that provider is promoted through CE Broker, what do they have to do? What kind of choices does a provider have? And if they don't choose to be promoted by you guys, like how much of it at a disadvantage would they be?
Well, and forgive me for not knowing, but does the board approve providers?
No, we
Okay.
do not.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of my follow-up questions, because your presentation did say board approved education providers, and we really don't do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. So presumably then you just accept those providers that are already accredited by the national associations. Is that?
Those are technically, they're one of the groups that are quote unquote approved providers under the rule. We have categories of providers from which a licensee must derive at least half of their continuing education.
Gotcha.
We got out of the business of blessing individual providers and just said, here's the category of blessed providers, get half your hours from them. The other half you can get from the unblessed bunch.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, so they have the option to register with us, right? So if you have the unblessed group, that they have the ability to actually register with CE if they'd with CE Broker. And so it's a very easy process. Once they have to essentially show that they are accredited, because we want our marketplace, the goal of that team is to deliver quality education. So when they are registering, if they are accredited by either a state or national association, they'll have to show some proof of that during that registration process. Once they've registered with us, then they can list, their courses will automatically be listed on our marketplace. And then they have the option to host that content. And a lot of them do as a secondary distribution channel. It's not mandatory. We we can help them get in front of everybody and be listed, and then share some of the services that we provide to allow them to host that content too. So when I'm as a licensed professional, when I'm in my account and I see that I'm lacking CE in a specific category or subject area, they have the ability to click a button that says view courses. It'll bring them right to that marketplace. And there they'll find, quality education, whether it's hosted there, they can just click a start button and start the course, or it'll link them out to that provider's website to take that course.
Yep. Daryl, my concern here is that under our new CE rules, we have all these entities that we consider able to become a certified provider. It's hospitals. We have the laundry list. And what my concern is, we are in effect ceding that authority over to CE broker to make a determination on whether they're an accredited provider or not.
No, I'm not getting that, Stephen. I'm gonna jump in. I'm not getting that. I'm getting that it doesn't matter where you get your CEUs from. If you do a course and you have a second stream of income from courses that you teach, you hand out those certificate, you just upload it into CE provider. It is not that you have to take their, they're just like, here, we have these, but you don't have to take it from them. Whoever you currently get it from will be the same process of loading it up into CEU provider, CE provider. Am I correct on that, or am I mistaken?
What would happen if they upload the course and they're not exactly sure if it qualifies for the 50% requirement or not? Somebody has to make that call. And are we turning that responsibility over to CE broker?
Never. No, we're not in that business. We just provide the neutral platform for all stakeholders to exhibit theirs and list their courses, host their courses. We do not provide CE. We do not approve CE. If the board chooses to want to check whether
I guess what I'm getting thrown off on is the listing on there where you said board approved education providers. Maybe that's what's throwing me off here.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying, Chair Hallbauer. Let's say you and I start a state association for LPCs, and
we would be gangbusters.
Yes, absolutely. We'd go broke in about a month. If we approach CE broker and say, look, we're a new state association that caters to continuing education for LPCs. We want to host our courses on your platform. They're going to have, who's going to make the determination of whether or not we're a legitimate state association under our rules for that 50% requirement?
That's my concern.
Yeah. Now I see what you're saying. I don't know the answer to the initial, but what I can tell you is there is a stopgap measure in that if you are audited and found, if we get audited and staff say, well, what's this Hallbauer and Spinks Association business here? That's not a legitimate group. We're not going to accept that. You can't count that towards your 50% hours. I think there's a stopgap there, but I don't know how to answer your question about if it's represented as already being if CE broker says, yes, that's in the 50% group. And then the agency comes back later on and says, well, no, it's not. That's not even a legitimate or association. I don't know about that one. I see what you're saying.
All right. Sorry, I've asked way too many questions. I'll hand it over to Dr. Skoma here.
Thanks. And actually a number of the questions you asked I had, so don't feel like you were doing that work. First of all, Ms. Cottrell, Ms. Skoma, thank you for the presentation. You may not realize you walked in on the tail end of a conversation about approved CE units that we've been having for several years, and some of our boards are quite spirited.
Okay, no worries.
Showing up at somebody else's Thanksgiving table and just saying, hey, nice candlesticks. And you don't know that people have been fighting over those candlesticks for generations. It's not you. Sounds like a great product. I trust our team in researching in that and seeing the other states. And some of this, I guess, is for Daryl. I believe in good ideas, but good ideas need to be implemented in good ways. And I always try to have a balance of, it sounds like Daryl, this is going to make the staff happy. I could see that being a real easy product for them. And I always want to balance making the staff happy and the stakeholders happy. So have we heard back? I know at MFTA, we had some questions brought up, a lot of those being about data that have been answered today.
Yeah.
But have we heard back from a number of our stakeholders? Because this would be a mandate. This would be something, and I
Right.
understand it really has to everybody in it for it to work.
Yeah.
Texans pretty independent folks here. Any pushback we see on that? How do we intend to implement that? Do we have a plan in place? Those kind of things.
We have not reached out to stakeholders yet, because really I didn't want to do that, because if you guys weren't willing to continue exploring it, I don't want to waste my time and get everybody riled up over nothing.
So what is today's decision then? I guess that's what I'm asking. Because
I
I don't have the information from the stakeholders to make some of these decisions if we're saying yes today.
Yeah.
I have sort of an idea on that thread, and it kind of something that came together while y'all were asking questions. And it has to do a little bit with my experience with the Centers for Disease Control and NIOSH regarding the N95 discussion in our country as I was in the middle of manufacturing them. The point is that in a heavily regulated industry like N95s, what happened is that a lot of the stakeholders and regulatory agencies said, who do we call? And they called like 3 companies. Never mind, there was a couple others out there, myself included, who couldn't get the time of day, and we didn't know where to look to get into the discussion. And so obviously CE Broker here is really good at what they do. That's obvious to me. I think that there are some questions that I have about the implementation. I'm curious what stakeholders think about this. So I feel like if this is something that we can table and then come back to and invite, at least put it out there as an invitation or request for proposal or something, for if there's anybody else out there, speak now or forever hold your peace, come and tell us if you've got a solution for this. And then also giving the stakeholders an opportunity to come and chime in and say, yeah, this looks like it streamlines things and makes our life easier. And again, my only other concern with things I've experienced in my real estate profession with data, and he or she who controls the data, controls everything. And so I would also be looking in those proposals for some guarantee, I think contractually, that there is a free option of a certain standard, and that those goalposts don't get moved 2, 3, 4, or however many years down the road. Because whoever we go with in this, it's going to be really hard to unwind it ever.
Yeah.
So,
Catherine, let me ask you, kind of back on Chair Hallbauer's question and what he and I were talking about. I know that question has probably come up with we're not the only state that doesn't approve providers,
Right.
and it gives you an objective set of standards to judge a program against to see whether it is approved or acceptable or not. How do y'all handle that when there's a question of?
Yeah. In some cases, if we can build workflows for those boards that want to, so somebody is looking at taking a course and they are not sure if it's going to be accepted. They can submit information, and we can build a workflow to submit to the board before they take the course to see if.
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay,
That's exactly
right.
what we got out of it. We don't
Right,
want to do that.
yeah.
Basically, I want to know, like, how do y'all handle? I mean, do you have a process whereby when CE Broker is looking at it and y'all go, I'm not sure. How do y'all reach out to the board? Do you just default to a not an approved provider?
Yeah, well, so there's only been one case where I of understanding, and it's actually a marriage and family therapy board in Georgia. Was it Georgia, where the provider was actually calling it an online course, but marking it as marking it as a live course, because they have certain hours that they have for live training versus that was massage therapy. I'm sorry. It usually comes back from the board to their client success manager to say, this is not accurate, and then work with our marketplace team. I don't know of any other situations like that where they the provider was promoting it as an online or a live versus online, and and he was not happy. One of the board members was just not happy with that. I would have to get back to you on how we would handle that, because I've never really have experienced where there was a, some fraudulent or just not, something that was not accepted by the board.
Mhm.
Let me research that a little bit, so I'm really answering you and helping you understand how we can manage something like that.
Chair Hallbauer, have I captured your concern or your question there?
I think we need some additional details. I'm imagining a scenario where there's an organization that is under our accredited provider list, and they fall under the approved providers, but they don't want to do what's required to be considered I guess a approved provider under CE broker. And so it's almost as though we de facto grant preferential treatment to the organizations that are willing to do that. And that's my concern.
So so just so I'm understanding, right? So those that don't want to register with us, your concern is that, well, you're saying that you're thinking that we're given preferred treatment or preferred listing. Or
do you promote some CE providers over others?
No.
Okay, so just anyone that wants to provide CE registers with CE broker, right?
That's right. Yep, they can register with us and then have options to host with us as well as list with us.
And it would be a required registration, correct?
Yeah, there's just it's like a quick application. If they're not going through the approval process that's set up within CE broker, they do have to show proof that they are an accredited CE provider.
And you guys, and you guys have, you make the decision on that.
We don't really, we just take it for what they're saying and take their word. If they're providing proof that they are accredited by an association or some other entity, that proof is what they need to submit. And that's what's on record for that provider.
I think that's Dr. Cartwright, you've got your hand up.
Oh yeah, on that point, I mean, then if audited, it would be removed, correct? Like if the board discovered based on an audit, then we could remove that.
And honestly, that's kind of how it works now. It's built on an honor system now, and it's the audit is the enforcement tool for that.
Right.
So if I want to open John Bolamowitz's counseling, continuing education, I might get a couple across, but somebody's going to figure out John Bolamowitz is not a counselor.
Yeah.
Despite my credentials here.
Yes.
I do have one other question though for you, just in terms of implementation, because I noticed that you said it was about 10 to 12 week implementation, and that's always kind of like the scary time whenever you bring this big system in and make sure it all kind of handshakes across the board. No pun intended. So what does implementation look like? What kind of like for our staff, like what are they? How many folks are going to be involved in this? Just what's that process look like? What's the time, energy, and I guess is there cost to that? And if I understand right, I don't think there is cost in terms of monetarily speaking, but just wanted to, if you could comment on the implementation.
Yeah, thank you for all these questions. They're great. Implementation. It's really the heavy lift is on CE broker. We might have a quick kickoff meeting with the board staff, just so that they understand what the next steps and process is in that implementation process. Other than that, our team will go on your website, which is a lot of information is there about your rules and your regulations. So they'll comb through, the implementation team actually combs through all those rules, all those requirements, and gets it all laid out. And then we'll have another hour or 2 hours with the staff and the subject matter experts to confirm that we have 100% accuracy on those transcripts before we send that off to our development team to develop the software to reflect all of my requirements, right? All the social worker, all of the marriage and family therapy, all of those different requirements will be laid out by license type. So really, there's not a lot of resources that is required by the staff. The heavy lift is really upon CE Broker and our implementation team. Now, 8 to 12 weeks is average and typical. If there's some nuances like, some special development of the software or any historical data that of courses that need to be imported or any other additional, outside of the normal build that may extend that time. And that's just a typical average time frame of about 3 months before we can go live.
I'll tell you, Dr. Cartwright, there is no way that I would want to implement this within 12 weeks. I would want at least 6 months. And this nothing to do with, it's more of an education effort for our licensees to make sure, hey, everybody needs to know this is what we're switching over to. This is the go live date. You will no longer be uploading stuff into your renewal portal. It will now be uploaded into Seat. So, what I'm trying to say is don't get worried about 8 to 12. That might be 8 to 12 weeks, what Catherine and I have to deal with one another and setting it up. But we're talking about a 6 months to a year lead in time before this thing would actually go live to make sure that everybody out there knew what was happening. Because you're always going to get that little niche of people that are like, I never heard about this.
That implementation timeline is really, we'll work with you with whatever your timeline is, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about like developing the software so it's ready. At that point, it's like, okay, now let's get meetings, like let's do lunch and learns. Let's, attend your associations and work with your associations. And maybe Ashley, this might be a good time to jump in with associations because I'm on the board side, she's on the association side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Catherine, for kind of teeing that up for me. And just like she's been saying all along, we're really here to be a resource. I work directly with associations, so I am that point of contact. I do work closely with the CSM and the client engagement manager as well, so that there is that stream of communication, that flow of communication going back and forth. But any questions that come up along the way, I am there to help answer. And then just explore different ways to work with associations. So just for example, like Catherine mentioned, we love to be able to attend conferences in person, love to have a booth set up, answer those questions that licensees may have in the moment, help them get set up in their accounts. If associations want to offer certain things like a member benefit, I know Catherine ran through the subscription accounts, things like that, signing up for those. There's a lot of different ways that we can work together, again, help get the word out in the beginning and then continue on with that conversation. And that really is my goal, is to be a continuing, continuing partner with you. I'm not going to just up and leave you. After a few months, I will continue to be that point of contact for the duration, which is hopefully very long, for the duration of that relationship and contract with the board.
So Texas Optometry, the former executive director, who is actually the director of our external affairs here at CE Broker, implemented CE Broker A to Z. And throughout that time, once the software was actually live and ready, she put a date out that's kind of coinciding with a renew, well before the next renewal, right? So we had lunch and learns and webinars for providers and for their licensed professionals. We'll do as many as you need, attend those association meetings, do whatever we can to make sure that everybody is well trained and well in advance of perhaps that next renewal. So she put that date out there. And she did promulgate that rule too, that she wanted, it was a 3-sentence rule, I believe, to ensure that everybody is using this same system. Because as Daryl said, it would defeat the purpose of streamlining the efficiency of the agency. If we have multiple people doing multiple things, that was not something she wanted to deal with.
Oh, sorry, Janine.
Okay, John, I know that you're getting close to your time, so I'll be really quick. I just wanted to make sure that people understood, if I'm understanding this correctly, Catherine, that say the system pings renewal and it's like Yeah, she didn't have them all because
You-
I blanked out and didn't know that this was happening.
You can say that again. You broke up there for a second, I think.
Sorry. Am I back now?
Yeah, I think we've got you. Just say the last
Okay,
sentence.
just real quick. If it pings me and I didn't realize we did this, and it says I don't have any, then there's a little bit of time that I would have to upload all of my CEs and then get my license renewed, correct?
That's up to the board. So a lot of boards have like this deadline, they have a grace period. So they might do like a soft stop, and so that you're like, oh, I'm not complete. And then there's that grace period, and then do a hard stop. If you're not complete by the end of the grace period, then you can't, the hard stop won't permit you to go through. So there's a number of ways that we can do this based on your laws, really. Everything is going to be delivered through by what you're, have the statutory authority to do.
Janine, one of the things we also, because we've already been in discussion with their IT, their database folks, to see how we would marry the two systems. It's technically not a marriage, it's more of a cohabitation, is the way I would describe it. But one of the things we looked at was, can we have CE broker system go through and look and see, okay, these are all the folks that do not have, they're not compliant right now and their renewal date's coming up. I think you can set that system to where it will send out reminder emails to them and go, look, you're not compliant, you better get compliant or you're not going to be able to renew your license. So we've got some flexibility there, whereas we can't really do that right now unless I manually do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's reports that you can pull. You can see at any given time, simple reports is like, hey, how many of our licensees are compliant versus not compliant? As simple as that. You can pull a more detailed reports, or we can help build some of those reports, like, hey, how many of our licensed professionals are meeting their ethics requirements? So there's a lot of reporting that can be delivered back to the board and can be pulled very easily, prior to your board meetings, etc. So yeah, the system, you can do internal audits. When you do an external audit, where it'll automatically notify those individuals, but you can do internal audits and doing any kind of spot check that you want as well.
I think obviously a lot of questions here. I think it's important that we at least solicit public input. I think it's important that we solicit we're talking about a pretty although it's not something we're paying for, this is a pretty big contractual relationship. I think we ought to put something out in terms of solicitations for proposals, knowing that we're looking for this. Obviously, I think CE brokers made a great presentation. So do we need an action on those for y'all to, or where do we go from here?
I think there's two things that I've kind of heard y'all say. One, it sounds like you want us to kind of solicit to see, are there any other providers out there in the sphere that do this? So you would almost do an RFP, which, I'll just be candid, I don't think there are, but
I think you're right.
Yeah, but I don't think there are, but do that. And then also, it sounds like y'all are also wanting to do some kind of stakeholder outreach, kind of get a pulse from licensees and stakeholders.
Yeah, or even just, it's on the agenda and public comment.
In all honesty, as we were sitting here, what I thought about doing was just a dedicated town hall to this one subject, and maybe get Catherine to, if she was willing to come sit with me. It'll be virtual because it just needs to be virtual in a state this size, but just do a virtual town hall where, Catherine, we kind of put on just like what we did here today. We have these discussions and you can demonstrate what it would look like, and then just kind of open it up for questions and comments from the public, see what they say. I think that's probably the best way to get public feedback on it.
Hey, I'll come to Texas, Daryl. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. We're always willing to, do things like that. Show them the actual software, to show them how easy and simple it would be, to manage this piece of their life, so that they can get on and serve the public, right? Serve the patients and protect the public. Yeah, we'd be very happy to do whatever the board needs. We're very flexible.
So I was aiming for a break at about an hour and a half. We've been going for 2 hours now. Do we need a motion on any of this before we go to a quick break? Or
I think Dr.
I'm
Scullman.
sorry, Dr. Scullman, thank you.
Real quick, and I love that idea about a stakeholder meeting for that. And Catherine, we would probably be bringing you to Texas in the summer, so be careful what you ask. It's hot. In terms of our individual boards, I know I personally wouldn't want to share some of these information that we've gotten back with MFT when we meet next. Janine, do you think that's something you and I could handle, or would it be worth their time to come and make that 10-minute presentation to us? I'm of either mind on that.
I think we could handle it if we could go ahead and have permission to have the overview, you know, to kind of explain it, at least just to the board. Some sort of materials that we could present to that. I hate to take Catherine's time. I think that, to me, this answers a lot of questions where when we said, yeah, we're no longer going to oversight CEs, and people went, what? I think that this puts a little bit more oversight and makes the public realize, yeah, we do go ahead, and our CEs are not just, you know, poodle grooming. So I think we
I've
could
checked off a number of the questions MFT board had already that I think I can answer, so I'm fine with that if we want to.
Same.
Thanks.
Janine, you're wanting Catherine's PowerPoint presentation she used today?
If that would be possible, yes. And then this overview handout sheet that you also included in our materials. It was 4C.
Yes, I'm happy to send this presentation. I'm
I
happy
think
to.
it's reassuring to see all these other boards and to have heard the numbers that you are common and used to working with. So I think that is reassuring.
I think, and I believe, Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, I gave you some references. I believe you've had some conversations with other similar boards.
Yes. Yeah, I've spoken with Ohio, Florida, who's ASWB. And then we've also just kind of sent out a generic poll, which I've shared with all the council members. Y'all all have that. But basically, nobody had anything bad to say. I mean, it was all positive comments about it. You know, the only thing it wasn't bad, but it was more along, when you get into much smaller jurisdictions, the utility of it becomes less, just because you can do it by hand almost as fast as what you can do logging into the system. When you get into those really, really small jurisdictions. But again, nobody had anything bad to say. Everybody was pretty pleased with it.
That's good to hear.
Okay, so we don't need a motion or anything. Or do you want a motion?
I mean, if y'all want me to send out do a
Solicitation.
solicitation, then yeah, I will need a motion
Okay.
there. And then if I don't need a motion, if y'all are all just okay with doing a town hall where we get Catherine and whoever else she wants to bring. And I guess even if some of y'all want to come take part in it, that's fine, as long as we don't have a quorum of the council there. We can do a town hall. I don't need a motion for that. I'll just do that, but I do need a motion for the solicitation.
Okay. I'm the chair.
Make a motion for the solicitation.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay.
Right.
All right, Catherine, I'll be in touch with you. We'll get that town hall set up.
Okay. It
And
sounds,
then,
yes. And I'll get the PowerPoint out to you, Daryl, to share with,
yeah, just shoot it to me and then I'll get it over to the boards. I'll send it to Janine, and then I'll send it to the other boards too, in case they want it.
Sure.
We report back.
sounds good.
Daryl, if we have some follow-up questions on this, do we relay them to you?
I don't see any reason why you need to go through me. You might CC me just so I kind of stay in the loop on what's going on, but I don't need to be the middleman between you and Catherine unless Catherine, you just want me to be.
No, I don't want to bother you. You all have my email is simple. It's Catherine@cebroker.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get back with Daryl on just kind of the little bit of confusion in the scenario about the CE providers.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
and just kind of see where, and that would, see what other boards, I'm sure it has come up. I'm just not aware.
yeah,
So,
okay.
Okay, without objection, it's 12:11 a.m. We can take a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 12:21.
thank you, everybody. Have a
Catherine,
great,
it's not a comment on you and Ashley, but I'm about to remove your panelist status.
I'm gone. Thanks, Daryl.
You bet.
John, are we going to come back in executive session?
No, we're gonna go back into rules in 10
Okay.
minutes at 12:21.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right, it is 12:24 and the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council is back in session. We're moving on to rulemaking, and we'll start with review and consideration of following proposed rule changes. This is 88261 special licensing provisions for military spouses. You want to lay us out,
Yeah.
Daryl?
okay, so this is the rule that Dr. Sarter and Mr. Francis had some concerns about because it does away with the license requirement. Let me tell you why we're doing that. We're trying to marry chapter 55 of the occupations code with this new federal law that has come out. The federal law does not require it does not require a military service member or their spouse to have a license. They just do these things and then they are eligible. They have a privilege to practice or a right to practice in the state. They're not required to get a license. Chapter 55 gives the council the option to issue a license. When we originally considered chapter 55 back when we were standing BHEC up, I had recommended that we not issue the license because I knew it was going to be difficult to administer for these individuals. But the council said, no, we want to do the license component, which was fine until this federal law came along. The reason we're doing this is even if you leave the license requirement in, they don't have to get it under federal law. They can just come in, file the application, and we're required to grant them a privilege to practice. So they are not required to get a license from us. So I'm like, why am I maintaining two different systems here? The state law also caps it at 3 years, but the federal law doesn't have any kind of cap. So in other words, under state law, you can only practice for 3 years, but under federal law, as long as you're on active duty or you got orders here, you can practice here. So the federal law just completely swallows the state law is what I'm trying to say. That's why we've structured this rule. And Patrick and I racked our brains trying to figure out how do we, luckily, most of the criteria is the same for them, which tells me it probably came from the same pattern legislation somewheres, but there are just some distinct differences, and the federal law, it's a little more liberal in its application than what the state is. And so that's why we're bringing this rule to you, because there's only like 12 people in the state that hold this license to begin with. It's a highly unpalatable license. Insurance won't take it. So that pretty well negates its utility. It's supposed to be for a temporary practice. It's supposed to be designed to just kind of float you either until you move again or until you go ahead and seek full licensure. So, I mean, we're trying to make the best of both worlds here, guys. I know some of the state associations raised some concerns about it, but I mean, you look at that federal law, I don't know why anybody would ever apply for a license when under the federal law they don't have to. They can just say, here's my notice, state agency, that I'm practicing here. You guys make sure I meet all the criteria and give me the authorization to go. So that's why we're doing this.
So the point is if somebody comes from Virginia and they're stationed at,
Camp Mabry down here.
okay, and with their spouse here, they're good to go.
Yeah.
And Congress has said, yeah.
Yes.
So
One of my concerns though, with just kind of the wording on it, like on point 2, where it says in the similar scope of practice and in the discipline applied for in the state, like similar could be like, in someone else's eyes, that could be a life coach, that could be I don't know, I just that wording, it just seems so vague that like anybody could say, hey, I'm a psychologist,
That's straight out of the federal law though.
Congress has said,
yeah, I mean,
tie goes to the runner.
And then, and then also the other term under point 2 of that, or you know, where it states, yeah, holds a license that has licensing requirements that are substantially equivalent. Again, you know, again, it's just the wording. It's almost like if you're kind of there, you know, it's just I don't like the verbiage, but
That, I think that's state law.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Scoma?
Thank you. And my understanding is that pretty much our hands are tied on this. We talked about this in our group. Question is, do we have any regulatory authority over individuals with these types of license? I mean, even in ethics dynamics, or does that the federal government would step in on that? Who would, somebody steps out of line, who handles that?
no, we would still have regulatory authority over them in the state. We would have to, it would basically be like we would just be revoking their privilege to practice is basically what we would have to do, and just say, look, you've blown it here now, your privilege to practice is revoked. We can't touch their home state license. And that's something I think a lot of people forget is they have to be licensed in another jurisdiction. It has to be active, and they have to be in good standing and maintaining continuing education in that state before they're eligible here. But
to use your illustration, if they came from Virginia and created an ethics issue here, we would handle that, not Virginia.
Correct. We could also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we could also tattle to Virginia and say, look, your person over here is causing problems. And then you've got the license for them, do something about it. Now Virginia may say, hey, that took place in Texas, we don't care, but
I doubt it. I mean, it's
yeah.
50-50. I think there's plenty of states that would jump on it.
Yeah, I mean, they could.
If the roles were reversed, I know, like from Texas, from the psychology board, if say somebody had a Texas license and was practicing in Virginia, and Virginia tattled to us and was some, you know, sexual impropriety or something, I'd be like,
yeah,
get them, bring them up.
If they were using their Texas license, we could, even though they were outside of Texas, we could still go after them. And you know, another thing that Patrick and I were talking about, I think what a lot of people just completely gloss over here is, if we're talking about active duty service people, they're exempt from y'all anyway. You're not going to have any jurisdiction over them because of their employment through DOD. The only way this is ever going to really come into play is if they want to have an outside practice from their service. Now, the spouses are a little different unless they're a federal employee of some sort, but it's kind of people can get worked up thinking, oh my gosh, these people are gonna be practicing. I'm like, you don't have jurisdiction over them anyway. So
quick follow-up, and then I'll mute myself out. This affects all the states. It's not just a Texas thing.
correct.
Are there any challenges to this on a state level in the courts, federal, state versus federal dynamics that you know of?
Not that I know of. We did talk about that at an ASPPB meeting the other day that I was at. We brought up the question of, is this even constitutional? Can the federal government even dip down into our sandbox and tell us we have to allow these people to practice? Now, outside of that federal employment issue, once you get out of that, I say unfortunately, I hate to say that, but I think you have to presume that it's constitutional or that it's legal and operate under it until a court tells you otherwise. I know that's how we would have to treat it if it were a state law. And I sure don't want to start treating the federal law any different than that.
That's why I'm asking. Is anybody talking about challenge?
No. And you know, what we talked about in that meeting is like, who's going to challenge this thing? Because you're going to look like a dirty dog doing this. Yeah, it's going to be a highly unpopular position to take. Now, I'm not saying somebody won't do it, but I don't know of any challenges. I don't know of any that are brewing. And I know a lot of states are struggling with how to implement this, because that was one thing we were talking about at that meeting. We were all like, how are you going to handle it? And I'm like, well, we had this rule developed. So I showed them, I'm like, this is what we're planning to take back to the council at its next meeting, and we'll see how it shakes out from there. But there's a lot of people that are just kind of bumfuzzled by how to implement this.
Daryl, what happens if they get divorced?
Well, then they automatically, I think, start to
if you lose that, you're no longer a military spouse.
yeah.
Yeah, you'd just be a civilian.
I don't know.
And that happens.
Yeah, I divorce people for a living. It does happen. I guess it's kind of remote, but I'm just kind of wondering.
Yeah, I do not know.
Okay. And we'll cross that dam when we get to it.
Yeah. So what I'm asking is, I don't want to throw Patrick's name, but what I'm asking is, I won't say we, Patrick. What I'm asking is propose the rule, let's float it out there, let's see what kind of feedback we get, and we'll go from there. Again, I know everybody gets, when they see a rule come up, everybody gets bent out of shape. I'm like, it's just a proposal, folks. We're just proposing it. That doesn't mean we're gonna do it. But I just think we're gonna have to do something to try to marry this federal law with this state law, because somebody's gonna come up here pretty quick and apply under that.
I think y'all did a pretty good job considering what you had to work with. It's sort of this strange little creation that you made, but I think it works. I mean, federal law is supremacy here, and we're doing the best that we can to reconcile it with what we have. I think you guys did a good job.
You can thank Patrick for that, because I just said, this is a problem. Come up with a rule to fix this.
Patrick knows I was talking to him. No. I guess we need to have a motion to
Yep, motion. If there's not further discussion, a motion would be in order.
I'll make it.
So move to propose move to propose 261. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been seconded by Dr. Skoma. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of proposing it, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. All right, so this is proposed. Thank you very much. Marriage and family therapists do not have anything.
Nope, we got 2 adopted for BHEC. We got to do 2 adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. 88210, 88410. Let's start with 88210.
We can do this as a package deal.
Okay.
This is these rule changes came about when we you remember the issue, NASW brought up the issue of applicants being hung up when they had a pending complaint against them and it was holding their application in abeyance. And so what we looked at was, we found a lot of those applicants had low level or just low level priority complaints pending against them, but it was holding them up for a long time. So what we've done with these rules is we proposed a new 2-tiered system: high priority, normal priority. Normal priority complaints will not hang up an applicant, but you guys can still sanction that applicant once they become licensed for pre-licensure conduct. If there's a high priority complaint pending against an applicant, the abeyance will still be in place. In other words, they won't be able to get licensed. High priority is stuff like sexual misconduct, axe murders, that kind of thing, the really, really bad stuff, child molestation, porn, that kind of thing. So we feel like this does a good job of kind of threading the needle there, not hanging up applicants with low-level complaints, the vast majority of which end up either being dismissed or, relatively low sanctions level on them. It won't hang people up anymore. So these 2 rules make those changes in our system.
All right, and so we have a repeal and replace on 88210 and an adoption for 88410.
Correct.
And if there's further discussion, this would be the time. If there's not, a motion to repeal and replace and to adopt, as I just stated, would be in order.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved in second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's say no, and the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, sorry. Now, moving on, there's nothing on marriage and family therapists. Daryl, thank you again for keeping me on track. Texas State Board of Examiners of Psychologists, and we're looking at 46538. So I would I'll lay this one out. This came out of, I mean, the meeting that we had last summer in the Texas Capitol. This is one of the ideas that came up. It was one of the ones that survived. There were plenty of bad ideas that got shot down. And so here we are. We've discussed it a lot. This rule has spurred more comment than I have ever seen in my tenure of going into 2 terms now on the psychology board. It's increased our attendance to records. So we've obviously hit a nerve here, and I really appreciate all of the conversation from stakeholders and from the board of getting us here, because it's something that's been talked about for a long time. But again, I do believe if you can see it, you can be it. You got to name a problem to solve a problem, and we don't have enough of these practical players. And so this is the first step. So happy to discuss, or any questions before we move on this.
I
Yeah,
will.
I just think that for so many reasons this makes sense. It just you know, there's been a lot of discussion, and we really do appreciate all the public comment. I think I could have read War and Peace faster than all the written public comment, but it was helpful to see it, and there were so many different great points that were made. And I think all in all, this just makes sense for the profession, easy to just for so many different reasons that, you know, we've outlined in the past. So I don't know if anyone else has any comment. I mean, I didn't really see a whole lot of negative comment either against it. And I think at one point we had 1,644 pages of written public comment in favor of this. So thank you, everyone. And hopefully we can go ahead and pass this right now.
And I want to point out that was coming from our lone LSSP on our board. And so in terms of, we can hopefully now call him a school psychologist on our board. And me as a public member, this is something that universally got a lot of support. So Dr. Cartwright, thank you for all your perspective on this to help get us here.
I will add one quick thing. The comments generated by this are what led us to develop the new comment webpage that we have, because we simply couldn't handle the volume of comments that came in. Or I mean, we could, but it took a lot. And we had to develop a better way to manage large volume projects like this. So as an aside note, that is where this came from, is this particular rule change, the volume of comments we got.
Daryl, of doing it for 21 years, I've never had that many comments to a rule.
Yeah.
Any other further discussion?
I thought I might filibuster against this issue. I'm just kidding. I thought I'd give some excitement for all of our guests that are watching. No, it's a great idea.
Any other discussion? Dr. Cartwright, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve Rule 465.38.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. And I'm aye voting on this one. The ayes have it. Thank you very much for everybody's work. Let's keep working on it.
All right. Don't have anything under LPCs.
And down to social workers.
Yeah, I'll lay out
Consideration and possible adoption of the following proposed rule changes. Take it away, Daryl.
This is again part of the social work board's efforts at streamlining their licensing criteria and kind of making changes where we're not catching people needlessly. They're deleting the 48 and 60 month maximums in 781.401. And by the way, Mr. Chair, I think we can just do all of these as a group, since they're kind of a package deal.
And it's just adoption, not
It's just-
repeal.
yeah, it's
The
just
motion would be to
adoption.
adopt en masse.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just adopting the changes. 404 is, again, it references that 48 and 68 month maximums. It's a date range, so we're getting rid of that. And we're also adding, Patrick, isn't this the one where we add the supervisory status process? Is that this rule 404?
404 is the supervisor course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
4-year training.
Yeah, that had never been in the rule before, so that, I think it was in LPC, who, was it MFT or LPC that had it
LPC.
originally? Okay, LPC, so we have now kind of copied what LPCs have done for the other boards to make sure it's spelled out how you become a supervisor. The other boards didn't have that, so we've copied from the LPCs on that. That's 404. 421 is, again, this is another copying. It started at Psych Board a long time ago. Remedy for incomplete license requirements. It gives the social work board the ability to allow an applicant to cure a deficiency rather than just saying, nope, you're denied. You can set up a system whereby they can cure a deficiency as long as it's not a statutory or a major deficiency. That way we're not hanging people up on little things. So that's a big step forward. And then lastly is going to be 501. And they just made some cleanup changes to their continuing education to mimic what the rest of you have done with your CE rules about adding hospitals and making the 50% approved provider not effective until next year, kind of delaying the effective date of that rule. Again, to make sure we've got time to message it and get that out there. So that's it.
Okay. Any discussion?
Daryl, did you want to talk about the implementation date on the 40-hour CEs, the 40-hour?
Yes, I'm sorry. In 404, we do need to make one non-substantive change. Let's see if I can pull that rule up here. I'm going to share my screen so that we can all. You'll have to bear with me. I've got 4 screens running right now, and they're all in different places from what I'm used to. Okay. All right. So we're now looking at 781.404. Originally, the board had it had been proposed with an effective date of May 1st of this year. Obviously, we've already blown past that date. We want to bump that out to September 1st. That way we can make sure we give people time to know about it and then kind of comply with it. So that's the only change. It's a non-substantive change. It's just we want to make sure we give folks time to comply with it before it becomes effective. So we would be adopting that rule with that change, but the others will just be adopted as is, as proposed.
So a motion to adopt 781, 401, 404, 421, and 501, but
404 with the discussed changed.
Okay.
Change.
I so move.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
It's been moved by Dr. Taylor. Is that a second from Ms. Smith? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on. Report from member boards regarding current or future issues that may impact the profession or agency's regulatory functions. I will start. We're working on some it's more of an update of an update, non-update. We're working on some testing with EPPP2. There's been a lot more discussion about that. We sent Dr. Becker to one of our other board members to their semi-annual meeting for some discussion on that. I have not gotten an update yet, but that's something that's impacting us. The rest of it, Dr. Cartwright, if you have anything else, we already have talked about it, I think, in how we responded to the legislature's directives in that report. Dr. Cartwright.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already kind of outlined the areas. Again, rural access, kind of helping with supervision requirements for folks that are in obviously places that are hard hit on services. And I think also just obviously what we've done with the school psychology title, really, I think you've covered it all, John, honestly.
No sense in belaboring it. Anybody else want to give updates or future issues, current issues that need to be brought to the BHEC board?
I will say one thing, sorry, we are looking at the EPPP2. We have a lot of discussion going on with that. It's that second part of the EPPP. There's been a lot of comment. I think we're going to have a town hall meeting soon in regards to that. So we're obviously encourage the public to attend. When we do that town hall meeting, I'm not sure when we're doing it exactly. I don't think we have a set date yet, but I think that's a very interesting topic coming up with a lot of discussion too. So that was one thing I forgot to mention.
Mr. Hallbauer.
Yeah, I'd like to give an LPC, and I'll make it quick, Coach John. We're continuing with our insights over the lunch hour presentations. We did one back on April 20th and had over 300 participants. This was on diversity. It was very well received, and we intend to keep doing these 3 or 4 a year if we can. We're paying close attention to the status of the counseling compact bill in the legislature. It sounds like we're kind of at a dead end on that for this session, but I do want to make it clear to LPCs watching this, it's not as though we give up. We are optimistic that this will be picked up again in a session in the future. So kind of a disappointing end considering our board felt that it had a lot of benefits for Texans, but we got farther this year, or the bill got farther than it has in years past, and we're hoping that it gets farther next time that it's considered. We'll keep an eye on it. We're optimistic that we can get this thing done someday. And then finally, LPCs also voted to go to triennial meetings. We wanted to kind of fall in line with what BHEC has done, and we want to stay on that schedule with having our meetings roughly before these BHEC meetings. That's about it from us. Dr. Taylor, anything to add?
That sums it up. That's what we got.
All right. Thank you.
All right, does that conclude? That concludes, I believe, that item. Any recommendations, any specific agenda items that anyone would like requested on the next meeting other than things we've already discussed? Hearing none. My desk is clear. That's it, correct? Nothing else?
My evaluation.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go into executive session now. And for those of the public who are still here, I don't intend to take up any other business other than dealing with Daryl's evaluation after this. So the executive council will go into executive session at this time pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act on agenda item number 4D, evaluation of the executive director's job performance to consider personnel matters under section 551.074 of the government code. The date is May 23rd, 2023, and the time is 12:50 p.m.
And for the public, we will leave this webinar running so you can stay logged into it, but all the council members will log off and join via a separate link for the closed session. And then when we complete the closed session, everybody will come back into this webinar and you'll see them come back up.
That's right. And like I said, just as housekeeping, I don't intend to take up anything else, but we could, but don't intend to. All right.
Patrick, have you sent out the link?
I just sent the email link. You should be receiving it now.
All right. We will go into executive session. We'll see y'all back on this link in a minute. All right, the Executive Council has now reconvened in open session on May 23rd, 2023, and the time is 1:05 p.m. My desk is clear. We have no other agenda items to take up. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Then moved, seconded.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you,
everyone.
John.
Bye, everybody.